welcome to Retech, and today we're just going to cover, it's kind of a little bit more of a project of mine rather than a retro computing kind of theme video, but it is along the lines of two things that I like doing. So today we're going to talk about sort of MIDI computers, keyboards, and all of the vintage and modern equipment that I have that I use almost on a daily basis, and it's something I actually quite like doing. It's something I enjoy, and it's something, you know, I like to do for the videos to keep everything sort of fairly original as possible as well. So it kind of makes an all-round kind of video theme rather than trying to copy, cut and paste and avoid, you know, YouTube content matches and so on that you kind of get if you're using pre-prepared work, etc. But you know, that's not really the biggest reason I do this, but you know, it is because I enjoy it, and that's, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't enjoy it. So as you can see here is just an example of kind of what a modern system is all about. It's a modern laptop with a PreSonus Studio 26C 24-bit sound system underneath, so that's for your recording both MIDI and through microphones and through line-in, etc. So you know, you can get a really good sound quality going as well, and a really good mix of instruments all through this little kind of innocuous box. And it's not the only one I've got, but this is one I actually do really like, and it fits with the laptop because it's very low power consumption, etc. So then I've just a little kind of soundbar thing for when I'm not using this, and I just want to play back things from the laptop if I've used the laptop to record to and play from. And then one of my MIDI keyboards is literally, it's a complete keyboard which is basically USB, so it's literally plug it into the laptop and then off you go, start playing on it. So this makes it all so very simple. Now, one of my other favorite MIDI USB and MIDI keyboards is this, the Korg microcontrol, and it's a really nice, well built, sturdy keyboard. But the downside is that it consumes slightly too much power for this laptop, and that's a big problem because you know, I like using this keyboard, and it's fine if I use it on a desktop, it's fine if I use it via a Mac, and it works really well. But on a Windows laptop, such a low power, low consumption laptop such as this, it sees it, but it doesn't allow it to work properly, which is a shame because this is one of my all-time favorite MIDI keyboards. And I do use it though, but I use it with the Mac and I use it with a Windows PC as well, because it gives it a bit more oomph from the power supply on a decent Windows PC. So yeah, it's one of my favorite keyboards. But you might be thinking, what's this got to do with vintage machines? Because so far you've showed me fairly modern kit. Even the Korg microcontrol's a reasonably modern keyboard, and this here is all modern kit within the last 6 or 7 months, especially the laptop, etc. And that's a good question, because if I show you where I am with my kind of retro kit and where I want to go with it, then you've probably got a decent idea of what I really want to do. So let's take a quick look. So let's take a quick look here. Okay, we have just my kind of racks that we've got of keyboards. Okay, the one you can see, the longer keyboard there, which is in the middle, that's my Oxygen MIDI keyboard, and it's a fantastic MIDI keyboard. And it's a nice keyboard, it's got good action to it, but it's older than it actually looks. You know, you can probably tell by the keys are starting to go yellow. Further down we have another M Audio keyboard, which is, I use that as well if I'm actually trying to do basically two different things when it's connected via USB to a PC, so I can play one keyboard and the other and play them together, which is fantastic, and it works really well. And it's nice to have really very similar feeling keyboards if you're playing one top and one bottom, just just to get different instruments going at the same time. And that's what it comes in really useful for. So now we come to some sort of more slightly modern equipment. I've got Korg Volca FM, Volca keys, Volca drum, and Volca beats up there. But I have to kind of admit that other than the Volca keys, I don't particularly use them that much. The drum kits on the Volca drums are really nice to sort of play around with, and it does produce some really nice sounds. Now the Volca keys I rarely use. When I first bought it, it sounded promising, and I thought, yeah, I could get into that because it seems like it's something that I really would like to mess around with. But after messing around with it, I kind of realized that I don't really have a lot for it to do, and that's the same as the Volca beats and also to a certain extent the Volca drum. But they do produce some really kind of good sound effects, which is what I use a lot of them for. And if I make a sound on those machines, and by creating the velocity, the tone, and the hold, and all of the kind of little tiny minor adjustments you can make on these systems to create a new sound, I will then sample it back so I can use it on a keyboard as normal. So I kind of don't really produce a lot of music or anything else on these. I kind of use them for their sounds they can make, if that kind of, if you understand where I'm coming from for that. And the silver machine next to, which is lying flat, that's basically a Behringer TD-SR, which is kind of makes acid style notes and riffs and small acid style samples, which is, it's quite nice, but yet to find a massive use for it. I'm sure I will, but it was nice to play around with, and it was nice to just see what it could do. And it's all right. It's not a bad sounding machine, but it does okay. Now behind the headphones, just here, you can see another 24-bit sound card, or another 24-bit sound system for recording. It records MIDI, line in, 48 volts mics, etc., and or guitar in if you need to. And it's another really fantastic sound card. It is actually as good as the Studio 26C, but it consumes a little bit more power, being slightly older, and it's kind of got slightly too many features really for a laptop setup. That one's linked to a desktop PC, and obviously some studio headphones just there, as you can see. As I spin it round, you can see a now vintage Macintosh, which that's actually connected to the two M-Audio keyboards, the upper and lower one on the left hand side. And basically that's what I use mainly through GarageBand in this, because I actually found GarageBand very useful, and it's a fantastic reason to buy a Mac. And I use that generally via GarageBand with those keyboards there, and it works really well. But I actually do also use it with Music Maker on a PC as well, or those keyboards rather, on a Music Maker on a PC as well, when I kind of need to do it. But it's just, it's kind of, they're interchangeable, which helps, and you can use them on both vintage and modern machines, because those two keyboards are USB and MIDI. Now there's one thing I forgot to mention. On the Volca units, I actually connect up a MIDI keyboard, which is the silver one on your right. Now that gets connected to the Volca units as well, and combining that with its inbuilt voices, you can get some really wacky and kind of oddball sounds that you wouldn't normally get. Now, as we pan down below, we just have an array of speaker systems and another 24-bit sound system just there, and in the bottom left hand corner you can see a modern keyboard which is on top of a modern PC. And one of my favorite machines is the eMac, which you can just see got sat on the bottom at the moment because that is very, very heavy, that machine, and it really does need to be supported on a quite a hefty desk. And also if you're thumping around on a keyboard as well, you need something with a bit of chunkiness to take the weight, so when it's not being used it just gets slid into that gap under the bottom. But that is predominantly used again through its version of GarageBand, which has some really nice instruments on it which even the slightly more modern machine above doesn't have, and that's why I use that machine. So yeah, it's a bit of a mix and match setup, but it's one I've kind of built up over quite a long period of time. Now as we spin around you can see the two Yamaha keyboards. I've got a bit of a soft spot for these Yamaha keyboards, and both of these have very, very different tonal range and different sounds to them. Okay, they're both basically FM based, they're both really nice keyboards, they sound fantastic, but they're normal old-fashioned MIDI, and that's brilliant because as well as using them with more modern kit such as the PC via a MIDI to USB interface, or the Macs, the two Macs, which again USB interfaces via the MIDI conversion to USB again. You can use them direct MIDI to the Volca units, or the Atari 1040 above with 4 meg of memory built into it, and also with the MIDI dongle you can just about see poking out of the left hand side of the machine. Now those two make a fantastic combination for recording sounds directly from the keyboards, and a lot of the sounds you can't really reproduce on a DAW or even GarageBand or any other kind of piece of software including Music Maker, etc. You can't quite get it to the point where it is exactly the same or it sounds exactly the same. And these are the two keyboards I predominantly use kind of just for live, without laying down tracks one key or one note at a time. These two I just basically play them live, and to that end I actually record them on Sonos, which is the interface which I use for MIDI on the Atari ST. So everything's directly recorded for Sonos. A lot of the stuff that you've heard on this channel and a lot of the music has been recorded through Sonos on the Atari ST, which is still a fantastic platform for producing sounds, music, MIDI. So that's really part of my kind of setup. I've got a lot of other keyboards which I use for different things, very sporadically, including a couple of nice Roland MIDI keyboards, etc., which don't get used that often because they're very power hungry, especially if you're trying to use them on a modern laptop, etc. They work fine on desktop PCs. They also work fine being MIDI to an old Atari ST, etc. But a lot of them that are not quite there with modern laptops because they consume far too much power. And even if they do work, you get clipping in the audio, which is never a good thing. So here's my kind of idea. I have this bench just here, okay, which is quite long. It's about 6 foot in length. It doesn't look that on camera, but it's about 6 foot in length, and you can see I have a Amiga ST there, sat there. That's the one I restored the keyboard on this channel a little while ago. I also have my 600 sat there and my recreated Amiga 500, which is literally just sat there at the moment. Okay? And I kind of figured that with my other keyboards, I've got a couple of Yamaha PSRs, a tone bank, and various other ones sort of dotted around here, that I would like to do a permanent kind of vintage setup. Now, I did think about doing it on the Amiga, and that would be a really, really nice kind of setup. Not the 500 or an original 500, but this one, the Amiga 600, which I've done a MIDI piece on previously, and it's a very, very nice machine. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the Mega ST. And the reason behind that is because it doesn't get used a lot, and it's one of those machines that lends itself really well to a MIDI system, because it's already got the high-res monitor, it's already got the kind of small pizza box kind of form factor, it's got a really nice keyboard on it, and by the time you've plugged in the MIDI software and the dongle and the keyboard to go with it, it might as well be used as a nice MIDI system. So that's where I'm going to go. This is what I'm going to do. But I would have liked to have done it with the Amiga 600, because I actually like the platform for MIDI that you can use on this machine. But it was just the fact that you got a MIDI master dongle and external power supply and all that kind of stuff. And even though it's physically smaller footprint, by the time you put a monitor behind it and the power supply and the MIDI adapter, etc., you might as well just keep it all in the ST package. But I may actually do two on here, and I think that's possibly what I'll do. I might set it up as a double use system, so I can use the same keyboard on both systems, and it'll give both of these a nice fresh lease of life, really, for any use. And the other thing is mainly because I have so many Atari STs which have all been repaired and restored, and I really want to give them a new lease of life. I think I've possibly got I've lost count, to be honest, about 14 or 15 STs, just about, well, almost nearly all of the models that were produced, including the early 520 ST, which had the separate disk drive, power supply, and so on. So so I'd rather put one of these to use, especially a restored one, because there's no real point doing all the time and effort into making something new, or as good as new as far as possible, and then not actually using it. So there's my plan over the next kind of little while, really, over the next few weeks or so, just to make sure I get everything the way I want it to go. So really that's my plan, is to create a MIDI area, literally using the vintage machines, vintage hardware, vintage keyboards, vintage MIDI software, and so on, just as a dedicated area to produce MIDI music. And it would be nice, because I kind of like the setup I've got, which I showed you with the Yamaha keyboards and the 1040 ST, and I also like the more modern side of it, which is here. And I really do have an appreciation for GarageBand on the Macs, because if you get a chance, it's worth the effort just to kind of either track a vintage Mac down and play with GarageBand and have some fun with it, because it's not a bad system. In fact, it's a very good system, and it will do most of what you will ever really need it to do. But having a dedicated system based on an ST that I can record and then record out of would be a fantastic idea. So that's what I'm going to be doing over the next maybe few days, week or so, is to get something set up that I actually want to use. You see, everything I do set up is something I do use, something I use regularly, because you probably noticed I like creating content for this channel, but I also like creating the music and everything else that goes along with it, and I think that's all part of it. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So I know it's a very kind of brief video, but it was just a walk around the plans I have for the vintage machines and MIDI over the next coming weeks. So I hope you enjoyed it, and kind of a brief kind of step into my mind really, and to what I like and where I'm coming from. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Bye bye.